Hello and welcome back to Lois and Morgana Davidson Art. It's Lois here, and today I'm going to be showing you how I painted this cloudy marshland scene. It's a winter scene with these beautiful golden reeds that I've just tried to suggest in the foreground. And my main focus for today's demo is preserving the white paper for that distant sort of marshy water and also in the sky. And preserving that white paper will give us these beautiful contrasts, and just using three colours will keep a nice colour harmony across the painting. And finally, keeping some separation between the planes of land in the distance will add depth and distance. This is the photograph from Pixabay that I've been inspired by, and I'm not trying to make a slavish copy. I'm using it as inspiration for colour and light and tonal values. The link for the photograph is in the description below. Just before I start, a quick reminder that my book, Landscapes in Watercolour, Techniques and Tutorials for the Complete Beginner, is available to purchase from all good bookstores. I'll leave a couple of links in the description below in case you're interested. There's lots of information there and 10 step-by-step projects. So the first thing for today is to simplify the photograph. And all I'm going to do is put in the horizon line, and I'm looking carefully at the differentiation between the different planes of land going off into the distance and simplifying those and putting in a few lines quite close together to guide me when I paint those differentiated different parts of the marsh and the distant water. There's a tree line. There are some mountains which I'm just going to hint at in the sky. Bringing those pencil lines further forward to create the shape of my middle and foreground marsh. And I've decided just to put in a couple of trees to leave out a lot of the smaller trees in the photograph, just to have a few trees over on the right, which I think will help to lead the eye into the painting. You can pause the video and take a screenshot of this sketch if it helps you. I'm going to start off using the wet in wet method, so I'm wetting my paper all over with a large wash brush. It's a Princeton Aqua Elite 1.5 inch modeler. My paper is Saunders Waterford cold press watercolour paper. It's taped to my board, and my board's at an angle of about 20 degrees slope. I'm leaving the white areas on the land dry, because water will flow into the wet page as I paint it, and if I leave those areas dry, then I can paint around them and preserve them for those lovely highlights. Now that I've used clean water to wet my page, this is really rich tube consistency Payne's grey and sepia, and I'm putting it on quite heavily onto the damp paper to create these grey clouds. Remember, watercolour always dries a lot lighter, so be bold when you're putting in your skies, especially with like deep grey clouds as we have here, because it makes a lovely contrast. You can see that I'm working around my clouds, leaving white unpainted paper for the clouds, allowing the paint to sort of run out on the brush, adding a little bit more just to deepen it in places, softening edges, using smaller brush strokes as I come further down the horizon, and this will give me a sense of perspective in my sky. Now, I've dipped into tube consistency Payne's grey with a little bit of sepia, so much richer, and using the tips of my brush I'm putting in my tree line. This richer, drier mix of paint won't diffuse and run down the page. It'll stay where I put it, but it will softly diffuse for my distant tree line. These trees are slightly closer to us, so I'm bringing down the base of the tree line a little bit lower than the distant tree line. I'm going to use my 3/4 inch flat brush, clean and damp, just to soften up along the edge of those tree lines. And that helps to create differentiation between those two tree lines. One is much further back than the other. Now, dipping into my burnt sienna, I'm putting in the first thin plane of land of marsh, and then leaving the water unpainted, coming back in for my middle ground marsh, more burnt sienna, really rich, dark value burnt sienna, allowing it to run out, changing my brush strokes as I come closer, and then dipping into the sepia and the Payne's grey again, changing the brush strokes to skip over the surface of the paper, produce some dry brush, just to get a bit of texture and interest going on, to suggest the reeds, or start suggesting the reeds and plants, etc., making sure that I do leave some patches where the white paper is showing through in places, because again that will suggest the waterlogged areas in the foreground of this marsh. Just 3 colours in this painting: burnt sienna, Payne's grey and sepia. Any similar colours will do. Now I'm introducing another plane of land, leaving sort of a white gap between the distant reed beds and this little plane of land, still keeping the white of the paper for the water. Painting it in a little bit paler underneath those distant mid-ground trees. I'm using my palette knife now to go over my pencil lines, or where my pencil lines were for the trees, where they've been obscured by the rich paint in the distant tree line. This helps me to see where my tree branches should be, but it also, drawing with the palette knife, scraping through the rich paint like this, helps me to get some slightly different texture in, so that then when I go in with brush strokes at the end of the painting to fill in the tree and finish it off, I've already got the tree started here and can see where I need to paint it. I can also use the palette knife to put in a few reeds in the foreground as well. So I've nearly finished this first layer, which of course is nearly all of the painting, put in wet. Things are just about dry now, and so the paint is staying where I put it, so I can just tidy up a few edges, define a few banks. Can just add a bit of more dry brush or a little bit more of that burnt sienna in the foreground, and then get some darker, richer Payne's grey around the base of those trees, just to sort of build up some shadows and some sort of undergrowth there. And I'll finish off using the fan brush just to emphasise my reeds and grasses a little more in the foreground. So that's the first layer finished. So I'm going to have a cup of coffee, go away and just make sure everything's completely dry before I come back and finish off the painting. So it's all nice and dry. So now to just do a few touches to finish the painting off using the wet on dry method. This means that the paint won't soften and diffuse, it'll stay where I put it. So I'm going to use it just to put in a few crisper edges, a few tonal values and some limited amounts of detail. So a little bit of detail just to put a bit of value into the edge of that marsh where it meets the water in the middle ground, and then back to my fan brush, dipping into sepia and Payne's grey and adding some slightly stronger reeds across the marshy textures in the foreground. Trying not to overdo it because I want to see the brushwork that's already there through those reeds. Now this is my size 2 rigger brush. Any small brush will do, and I've dipped into a mixture again of Payne's grey and sepia, and I'm using these thin brush strokes to paint in the tree trunks and the branches, making sure I taper off the brush strokes towards the end where the twigs are quite fine. And I think I'm just about done. I'm going to remove the tape and have a look at it and see how it looks with its clean white border. This should help me to assess whether I need to make a few little finishing touches. And I'm quite pleased with the way it's turned out. I think I'm just going to put in a few extra brush strokes across the foreground and the midground marsh, maybe soften off a few edges there, so smudge it with my finger so that the paint just sort of softens a little bit. I'm just going to put in a few sort of sticks and twigs growing out of the ground around the base of those trees, just to fill that area out a little bit more. And I'm quite happy with that. And here's the finished painting. I hope you can see how effective it is to leave the white of the paper as your lightest lights. It gives an amazing contrast in the sky and on the land, so it depicts the water and the light on the clouds. There's also some nice dry brush where you can see some sparkle of that white paper showing through the reeds in the foreground. So I think it's a really good thing for beginners to bear in mind, that sort of painting around and leaving some parts of the paper unpainted will give you some amazing highlights. It needs a little bit of careful planning when you're putting in your drawing to start with. And of course, it's all about keeping those areas dry when you put in the first wet layers, because the paint will only run into the wet areas. It will resist the dry areas, so that you can keep the white paper quite easily by being mindful of that. If you found the video helpful, or if you enjoyed watching it, then please click on the thumbs up button. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, then I'd invite you to do so, because it really does help with our reach and it's free to do. And thank you so much to everybody that supports us financially on Patreon or by buying a copy of my book. We really do appreciate you so much. And if you'd like to support the channel, then follow the links below. I'll see you again soon. Take care and happy painting. Bye.